Star Wars is in a sad state, and with all of the shows they're pumping out, like Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and The Mandalorian, we've all been left feeling underwhelmed. And I know I was personally extremely excited for Obi-Wan going back. Seeing so many iconic actors back in their parts and traveling across the galaxy was a very exciting idea to me. But it turned out to be the Leia show, and a disappointing experience overall, and now the director has admitted the Leia plot was actually written before she joined the project, and even, to future Star Wars directors, she has recommended they completely disregard canon when making their content. I have a few different things to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content that I create, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media so you can see when my content is posted, and of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and live streams I create, consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon or a supporter via YouTube memberships. So starting off with this Bounding into Comics article, it says Obi-Wan Kenobi director Deborah Chow says her advice for future Star Wars directors is to not get hung up on the Star Wars of it all. And this is rich coming from someone that was behind a show that was hated because of how much it disregarded the source material. That was the number one issue that a lot of people had with Obi-Wan, because of course the CGI was pretty good, the pacing of the series was not the worst. One of the major issues was the fact that you had these characters and it was completely disregarding the canon. I mean, look at Obi-Wan and Anakin. They were not supposed to meet again until their final battle, but of course they needed it to be some big epic moment in the show, so they actually did it twice. That is a major problem that people had, but of course, going forward, she's saying it's actually okay if you're working on Star Wars and you ignore the canon. It says, speaking with the Hollywood Reporter, she was asked, what advice would you offer to the next director of a Star Wars project? And she said, make sure all of the creatures go to the bathroom before you bring them to set, otherwise you're going to be waiting for 45 minutes. She's trying to be a little bit funny, and it's not that bad. She said, the biggest thing I learned from The Mandalorian is to not get hung up on the Star Wars of it all. It's hard on a project where there is so much canon and so much responsibility to a fan base, but I would always go, if you take the Star Wars out of this and it's just people and human emotions, does this story still hold up? This is one of the most frustrating things I have heard from someone working on Star Wars in a while, because of course you have the Kathleen Kennedys that are like, the Force is female, and she's greenlighting all of these female-centric projects that literally have nothing going for them except for the fact that, oh, look, they're females. But the reason why Star Wars got so popular in the first place was because it was new and unique, and it was Star Wars. That's why so many Star Wars-themed shows and movies and projects in general do so good, because they're not just humans with emotions doing human things. We're talking about in a galaxy far, far away. We're talking about lightsabers and blasters and aliens and ships, and it's so unique. That is why it is so beloved. Not because, oh, you have directors who have taken the Star Wars out of it. They say that it's so hard on a project where there's so much canon and responsibility to a fan base. Yeah, that's why Star Wars is so popular, that you get to do a show in this universe. It is so frustrating, as someone who has loved Star Wars for so long, to have them hiring people like this who are perfectly fine with disregarding the canon and the source material because they feel a little bit too overwhelmed by it, like they had a responsibility to a fan base. You do. That's how it goes. That's why, again, Star Wars is so popular, that you get to do a show in this massive universe. Not only did she tell future Star Wars creators to ignore the Star Wars of it all and Star Wars canon, but she justified her canon-breaking decision to have Obi-Wan leave Tatooine and cross lightsabers with Darth Vader before they eventually met on the Death Star in the original Star Wars film. David asked Chow, did Alec Guinness true from a certain point of view line about having told Luke that Darth Vader murdered his father give you license to imagine that there was more to most of what Obi-Wan said? And she answered, I don't think anyone will ever know exactly what George Lucas intended or what the intention was with some of the lines. There's so much room for interpretation and so many people have different interpretations. So for us, the big thing was emotional authenticity and that this felt innately like the right journey for these characters who were coming out of the prequels and into A New Hope, she added. To me, as someone who has loved Star Wars for a very long time, this did not feel authentic. It did not feel like this is what was supposed to happen. This is what George Lucas imagined happened after, the prequels and going into A New Hope. It just felt so thrown together. And this is an issue that we have felt with a lot of Star Wars projects recently, but it just felt like a cinematic moment, right? Like they created this show based on one or two cinematic moments, and it happened to be Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader. That's all that they really had going for this. And then of course they had to throw bits and pieces in there, right? They had to throw in Leia. Let's start there. They had to throw in Reva. They just had to throw in different elements to make it a full show. But it just did not feel, as she's saying, authentic or innately right at all by any means. But to make it worse, we now also know, because she has come out and said that Kenobi rescuing Leia was actually developed before she even joined the show. This screams chaos at Lucasfilm. They were bringing new people in this far into the project, people who were directors. We're not talking just about like one of the side writers or one of the actors. We're talking about the director. Even though, we had previously Ewan McGregor claiming that the series was supposed to be all about Kenobi and Luke, they, of course, it seems, decided to change that at the last minute, or as close to the last minute as possible. And I personally was, pretty disappointed with this. I did not mind seeing, young Leia. I did not think that was the issue. I would have been fine with seeing her in it, but the issue is that it became the rescuing Leia show, just like The Mandalorian now has become the baby Grogu show. I think they were expecting young Leia to sell better. I thought they were, maybe expecting her to be more of a hit with audiences, and of course that is just not how it turned out to be. But this series overall is very disappointing for me as a Star Wars fan. I know it left a lot to be desired for a lot of other Star Wars fans as well. I used to absolutely love Star Wars. Any new project I would get so excited for, so hyped for. I loved this universe, and while I do still have a lot of love and nostalgia for the older pieces of content, just the new stuff is not good in my opinion. Obi-Wan was a series I was very excited for, and I was left very disappointed. You have The Mandalorian, which was, okay. It's definitely had its ups and downs, its bumps. Ahsoka is another series that we have heard at this point is kind of turning into the strong female show. Maybe it'll still be good. I don't know. I will definitely be keeping my eye on it. And then, of course, you have The Acolyte, which is another female-centric project. Just a lot of downs, not a lot of ups. Do I think that they could save Star Wars? Maybe. I think that it would be very difficult for them to do at this point. I think that someone like Kathleen Kennedy has really dug her claws deep into this franchise and unfortunately killed a lot of what made it good and unique and original in the first place. In my opinion, they really lost out on a big opportunity here with Ian McGregor and Hayden Christensen back in the cloaks as Obi-Wan and Darth Vader / Anakin. I felt like they could have done so much better, and they just disappointed us all. But it does sound like behind the scenes there was chaos, and still is chaos going on at Lucasfilm, and it is never a good situation when you have directors straight up admitting and giving advice for future Star Wars directors that you should not get hung up on the Star Wars of it all and completely disregard canon. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.